Hello, hello. With a bit of a delay, I finally can say that I have an idea that I want to implement this evening. On previous stream, I've spent some time finalizing the project about hitboxes and the program that helps with them, called hitboxing. Oh, why I'm talking like this? So, there is hitboxing project, and I've made a couple of commits that finalize the changes to simplify the shape that is used by my player avatar, so it's only square, and code that I use to move it around the screen is easier to read. I would call it like that. And I decided like enough is enough. The more time I spend with this particular project, the more time I'm not spending on something else. And this topic with geometry, with shapes, is a bit boring if we don't do something like a game or something with it. So I decided I want to play around with other ideas, and the idea that I actually want to implement is a jumping mechanic. So I want to press a spacebar on keyboard and I want to see jumping square. But there is a catch. I don't have the base project, and previously when I started hitboxing project, I just copy pasted existing one and spent some time renaming it to fit the new project. So I don't want to spend this time again, and this time I decided I want to make a starting project, and I called it Code Starter. Yes, currently it's still a copy of existing project, but I want to spend some time and show that it's like repeat the same idea, that it can be done, it doesn't take too much time, and it can be really useful if you would decide to make your own base project, something really simple that sort of jumpstarts your imagination, and you don't have to copy paste configuration and so on. So I decided I would call it a code starter. Code starter. So first things first, I wanna change documentation in README. Like, why would I use it? Okay, it's basic project with moving square. Handles graphics, keyboard. So whatever you wish. Okay, so you should run this stop launcher main method. It's Java 8. I guess it's the same main loop. So libraries used. Nope. Used. It's libjdx. And that's about it. I'm not sure that I need this stuff, so I'll just remove it and always can edit if I really want it. So okay, that's about README. So next let's check what we can see here. Okay, we can see this concept, hitboxing concept desktop. I want it to be called Code Starter, or maybe just Starter. Okay, rename. Okay, refactor. Okay, we have this stuff. No, don't need it. Okay, then we have this thing. Let's rename it too. Call it a starter. Okay. So let's try. Can we actually run it and get anything useful for us? There's it. Blah blah blah. Warnings. Okay. So I can move my square. It can move in diagonal ways. Nice. I don't need those squares at all. So let's remove it. Hitboxing at its finest. Yeah, we also should change the name. Sounds about right. So what else we have here? We have hitboxing. Nope, I guess it also should be something like a starter. Okay, application developer. So what do we can throw away? We definitely don't need rectangle pointers and arrays. That's kind of meh. Do we need this poly badge? We don't need these. Probably don't need this fancy class. We don't need regions, but we still need textures, and I guess we don't need these. Sprite badge. Oh, that's nice of you. There are no issues from Windows Defender. That's great. So what can we see here? At the setup, I don't need setup at all. I don't want to know anything about those rectangles. Don't need it. Okay, I need a sprite badge, probably. So this one, it's only for rectangles. This, this approach allows me to save data about escape and space on key down, okay, and key up for space. Okay, nice. So this is for handling keyboard. I guess I would need it. We can keep it. We also need something to exit our program. Apply player input. To move it around? Meh, yep. Sounds reasonable. Calculate collisions. I'm not sure that we need this. Player collisions. Is it... limit. Do not allow player move beyond screen. Fine. Calculate these collisions. We don't need those. Get poly sprite. Not necessary right now. So, update iterations, fixed timestamp, internal time tracker. I would keep it like this. It sort of adds complexity, but not that much. About 15 lines of code. So what else do we got here? We used poly badge to draw multiple sprites. And we don't do it anymore. This is where we actually draw player image. Batch. So we still need some batch, sprite batch. Okay. Where do we use it? Yep, we initialize it here, because when we want to draw a sprite and we use this class called sprite to draw in our image, we need this sprite batch stuff. Okay, guess it's batch in case I would do it like 100 times and it would be much faster with this batch thingy. These are not useful to me. It should be caught when we exit our program. Okay, so it's about 200 lines. That's still long enough. Maybe we can move some code around, but I'm not sure that we need it right now. Yeah, kind of weird. I'm listening to the rain while outside it's minus 15 Celsius. It's winter and snow. So okay, draw batch, player, okay, apply player input, calculate iterations, good enough, against borders, This probably can be simplified, but it's not the main problem right now. We can do it like this. JDX, input state, game state. Why it's here? Oh, there is... So my idea was that these GTX specific, and these are like program state specific. So the idea is that, let's remove it. Okay, so when we have this state, I would call it, it says that our player has values, let's like x and y. For example, 200, 200, and we know that the center of our player image should be set somewhere on a screen. We know that the maximum height and width for our screen was set at the beginning of our program in this desktop launcher, and we can use it. So imagine for a second that you have all this data and you already can imagine like how you change x parameter and your player is moving either left or right. Yes, but before you can start playing with this imaginary solution using your computer, you have to teach your computer, or you have to provide him instructions how he can try to mimic your imagination. So I see it like that, that I have an idea, I have so I want to move around a square, and my first thought, okay, I can draw shapes, but I still need something like a point that will be the reference for this moving shape, right? So I need to keep it somewhere, and I also need to check keyboard if some buttons are pressed or not, and for this I have to use special data structures that would keep this state. So when I'm thinking about my player, I called it player entity and square entity. Yes, and it has like side width, side length, side size. In pixels it has this x and y, and it also has speed that we use for moving around. Sorry. And I have to keep it, and I have to keep it somewhere. Why would I do this? So the idea is that if we know what is FPS, it's not first person shooter, I mean about frames per second. And we know that we have to draw sometimes multiple frames per 1 second. For example, if we're moving something, if we want to get this smooth animation, we have to make it about 60 times per second, and it will be super nice. So we have to recreate these images that will be sent to our monitor, our display, to be shown on a screen without delay. So technically you need something of an input information, and then you need a procedure how you will generate images. And this kind of a technical thing, but when you have input data, you can have multiple ways how you can render your information. It can be something in 3D. Even if it's 2D game, you can have like depth of field when you render in it. But you still need this input data, and you need a rendering site, the one that turns your calculations, sorry, not calculations, it turns your input information and can create, really sorry about that, and turns it into actual image that can be shown. Kinda stupid to pronounce it like that, but if you don't keep it, if you keep it like just small variable, how would you add an additional one and keep track of all of them? You can maybe create a static variable and keep track of it in every place, but it would be like really not that easy to just get the the order of how everything, like, spent some minutes on this, and I really dislike what I'm hearing. So I need an input because I have a render path that turns this input into actual image. When I keep it in one place, I can manage it. I know where should I change something, and if there will be an issue, I can always add logs because it's easy for me to track this game state that I use for rendering. That's it. That's sort of easy way to achieve this FPS thinking. And let's get back to the code. So we have this game state that keeps only screen maximum height and width. It also contains these public square entity pairs, so you know that for our program state we need an entity that corresponds to our moving image and some dimensions of a screen that we are moving around. That's it. When we create it, we do it probably game state. Where is oh yes, it's in the beginning. It's the first thing that we do. We also create this temporary data structure to track if our keyboard buttons were pressed. We can live without it, but it is like really not that obvious how to track it. I mean, if you do, even now I'm doing it like this. Every time I'm handling some input, I have to check these. Yep. So there is key pressed. Nope, it's not like this. It shouldn't be like this. Sorry for interruption. Find usage. JDX input. Okay, so this object corresponds to current state of keyboard. Okay, and we use it here. No, we're using it here. Yes. So we have input, and it's something from JDX, and we have input state, and this is something I use internally to track the pressed keyboard buttons. We can add anything we want, like a gamepad or something, but it doesn't matter. For me, so as I said, when we think about render, if for some reason you decide that okay, I will keep the code in one place, the one that tracks the state of my program about moving like elements, players, enemies and everything, and I will draw it right away. Nice? Well, kinda nice. So when you decide to add additional logic, like some sort of behavior for your enemies, like how would you manage to work only on this particular piece of your code? You can put multiple comments, you can try to not draw something, but it's still like, why would you do this? The idea is that if you have some state, you have to approach how would you transform it or change, and then after you have changed it, you can finally go to render side. It's kind of boring, but makes sense. So we have input state, right? We have some state of our program. For example, if there is enemies or physics or moving objects, like something in an environment like fallen tree, for example, we have to calculate. So I guess what I'm trying to speak is, I'm trying to convey the idea is that you can think of a game as something like magical, something like artistic, like what would you draw, what would you feel, what sound would play, how would it behave, how you want to feel when interacting with it. But there is technical side, and it works like this. You have a data and you want to build a number of rules how this data would be changed, and number of like integrations with your computer to show this data visually. That's it. You have to set rules how this gonna happen. And the easiest one is trying to like identify and use idea of time in your system. So you are trying to recreate not only rules, but the concept of time, that after some time passed, you expect something to happen. So for example, after 5 seconds, you expect like this square to change its color. Or after 10 seconds, your player would turn back to the center of the screen, like that. You have to track this time, and you have to use it to actually, how would I say it? Well, the time should be your friend. It would help you to generate those images that would allow you to show smooth animation of what is happening on your screen. It can be super useful, and it can be really awkward to work without it. So for example, if you have this concept of your internal time, then you can easily create a pause functionality. You just stop calculating your changes according to keyboard, because nothing is happening in time. Your time stopped. And the trick is that you also can play a bit with this time. You can make your game faster or slower because you have this control over your internal time mechanics. Something like this. I mean, like, the simplest way would be to show if you, for example, decided that you have this program. Sorry, I haven't started it yet. It's okay. Okay, so I can move it around quite fast for some reason. It's okay. What if I decided that I want to move it a bit slower, right? I want the state input fixed timestamp. What would it be? Yep. I want to move it, for example, faster. Okay, what would be the difference? You can see how it's actually moving really fast, because the changes of position for my player are based on speed, but they are also based on a time that I'm using here. So if I know that my game is playing 60 FPS and I set this constant to 1/60th, it means 1/60th of a second. And here I'm saying that 2 times of this. I can also say something like this. Oh, no, this would be too slow. So if I said I want half of this, and now you can see it moving slower. That's the trick that you can use in your simulation. If, for example, you know that something should be working in a certain way, but for some reason it's working not like that, and you don't know how to debug it, how to test and experiment with it, and you can play around with your time and make this time go slower, so that you can see like frame by frame what is happening. That's about it. And when you have this time tracking plus your state plus some of your rendering logic, then you have your interactive program. It's not that easy, I would say, but the value here is that everything is in your reach. If you want to change something, you know which part of code you want to change. If you want to add something with a sound, then you should think like which event is happening, what you want to trigger, what's triggered by what. And you understand that it's not just some magic, some editor that you should push some special fields or something. No. You have this particular order of things. You have time tracking, you have your calculations of a state, then you render it. If you want to add sound, probably it should be something after calculations of your collisions or of the player input, somewhere here. So what else we got here? We have project, we have geometry. Do I need it? I'm not sure the get. Is it really used? Let's check it out. Nope, not like this. Get direction. Oh, okay, get direction. Because this one requires some effort. I'm not sure what get direction. There is some tricky logic here. Okay, doesn't matter. Input state, it's a map with direction angle. Not sure that it should be a part of an entity. Probably like this, to keep active input received from the... Yep, this makes sense. So input, we have something for keyboard. Okay, some constants. Just to not type them. I could use numeration, but I needed, I guess, string constants to use with my input state. I could use enumeration, but it doesn't matter much. So what I talking about? Yep. So anytime I want to play with some idea, with some jumping mechanic, with some tricky movements, with some moving, like now I'm moving my square with my keyboard, but if, for example, I would want to recreate or create additional square that is moving on its own by its own artificial intelligence, you could say, enemy AI, then you need some basic project that you can start with, and you should know how it's working, or at least know where to put things to see them on a screen. And for me it will be this code starting thing. Next time I will start something, I will just open this project, I will play around with some naming, because this thing definitely would be changed for new project also. This code starter thing should be changed. Oh, let's also check. Find. Control Shift F. Do we have something with hitboxing? What is it? Oh, okay, nice. It's like something saved for SVG. Yep, we also have our assets, and we don't need PNG for player. We already have our square, and I guess there is some SVG. We can remove it. Yep. So this particular piece of code, it's a bit tricky because it actually working with images, and those images were prepared by me like before those projects started. So like this one, this square, it should be like 150 with alpha channel, but I don't need alpha channel here. So later I can load it and use on my screen. Let's, for simplicity's sake, change something with the base color that is used for blue, green and red. I would say I need less of blue. How would it look? I can't see any difference. It's suspicious. Okay, let's try again. I can say that it got better. 01F. Oh, because it's 1F. No, I want it like this. 2 green. If I add... Oops. Nice. So if I add here something like 6, what would it look like? Come on. It's kinda boring. On the other hand, why can't it be gray? It would incentivize people to change it. Oh, this one is dark. Let's stop it and run again. It's not too white, so it wouldn't be burning through my eyes. And we can see moving square. Good enough? Good enough? Okay, I can call it a day, so I can show you, for example, that I want to create new project for myself. Okay, here I can see new repository. I want to call it code starter. So it's a starting point for my programming experiments. Yes, it should be public, I don't want anything else. Now I have these number of commands that I can use using my, let's say, CLI, command line interface, but it doesn't matter right now because I usually just skip it and do it manually in IDE, and it's always kind of boring, and I don't waste my time discussing like how it can be done, because you can do it visually. There are multiple ways how you can do it in IDE or through Tortoise SVN or through, Tortoise Git, or through any other solution that you like. You just should check which of them you prefer. So what I want to start my repository. I should add everything as initial commit. Yep. As I edit everything as initial commit, I just copy and paste commands that I saw because I already have a repository. So I set it to point to this GitHub project that I created. Then I'm setting the main branch. There is concept of branches, like when you're doing something, then you want to experiment and you don't want to break your main version of your code, you can make a parallel version of it. In computer things, we have these data structures called trees, and because we use this organic, I would say, idea, concept, comparison, we also can use this idea of branching, because trees have branches where you have a spot and something goes to the left, something goes to the right, and you have this branch management and different ways how you can combine them together later. So what's my next step? Okay, git push something. Okay, so let me try. Would it push something? It seems that everything is fine. Let's get back to it. So I did these commands that were provided here, or push an existing repository from command line. If everything went well, I should just refresh this page. Voila! I can see that the name of a project is correct. I can see the code. Let's check it. Starter, yep, and it's the one that I actually changed in my project. So that's it. I find it good enough for my experience, so next time when I would want to show you the like one simple way how I would approach implementing jumping, not that I know beforehand how I would implement it, I just wanted to show like a game that shows some way of implementing jumping, and you probably can name hundreds of them how you would implement jumping, but I just want to start from somewhere. Yes, so next time I will spend time checking out how it's working. Right, should be fine. Yeah, it would require some cable management. Yep, so and this here I have an approach that allows me to use the WASD and keyboard arrows to move around. We have square entity, we have something here, some comments here. That's it. I hope it was not too long. I guess it wasn't that entertaining, but it's not for entertainment. It's just to show you the way how you also can approach your projects, and if you know that you would need some smaller project to base your ideas around it, you can always try to extract it and save it as a separate one, so that later you can reuse it. Kinda neat way. And from now on, I wish you all a great week.